Hey there, Tom from CarbonTrail here. In this session, we'll talk about the sources of emissions in your organisation. Understanding where emissions come from will help you gather data for those emissions sources and will be important when you come to the measurement phase of your journey. First, let's recap the emissions scopes, which we touched on in the Key Concepts video. In terms of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, which is the most commonly used standard for quantifying emissions, there are three scopes of emissions: Scope 1, 2 and 3. Inside Scope 3, there are a few subcategories ranging from business travel through to your purchased goods and services and waste emissions, to name but a few. It's worth noting that the ISO standard measures the same types of emissions, it just categorises them a bit differently when you come to report them. Over the next few videos, we'll go through each of the scopes and categories and talk about the common emissions sources in an average business. So first, Scope 1, direct emissions. These are the emissions that you emit directly into the atmosphere. And let's start with stationary combustion. These emissions come from burning materials such as coal, wood, diesel. Most commonly, these emissions come from generators, boilers, furnaces, and incinerators in your organisation. We measure the emissions for this category by looking at the amount burned or used. So for coal or wood, this would be kilograms of fuel that you put into machines. For diesel, it's the litres of fuel that you've used. You'll find that data in invoices, receipts, information from your suppliers. For diesel, you can also refer to your fuel card. Tools like CarbonTrail allow you to upload your fuel card directly and calculate. Fugitive emissions. Did you know that some refrigerants and gases are incredibly harmful to the environment and heat the earth even quicker than carbon dioxide? This is the reason we look at emissions from refrigeration units, heat pumps, medical gases, welding gases, and so on. The reason that this category is called fugitive emissions is that gases escape from various sources and make their way into the atmosphere where they cause damage. We measure the emissions for this category by looking at the types of gases you're responsible for in your business, either inside machinery like a heat pump or those that you purchase, such as welding or medical gases. For heat pumps and refrigerators, your maintenance company or landlord will often top up the refrigerant gas each year to replace gases that have escaped. If you can't get hold of how much that was, we can apply a sensible guess based on the amounts that escape from similar models. So, how do you find that data? Most measurement approaches take you through the process of understanding the different activities you perform and where those gases are likely to be used. For heat pumps and refrigerators, if you know how much has been topped up either by your maintenance company or landlord, that's great because we can use the exact numbers in the measurement process. If you don't know, you can take note of the model number of the appliance and find out the gas used inside it. Using a tool like CarbonTrail, you can then get a sensible guess applied to find out how much has escaped over the year. For other purposes, such as welding or medical gas, we just need to know how much gas you've used. So you can find this by reviewing delivery information from your supplier and reviewing your usage. Most tools require this information in kilograms of gas used. Mobile combustion. This category refers to the fuel that you burn in company vehicles. This might be from your fleet of trucks or even a helicopter. You can find this data from your fuel card, fuel delivery documentation, or fuel receipts. Most measurement processes require this in litres or gigajoules. Tools like CarbonTrail help you upload this directly into the system to calculate an accurate estimate. Biogenic emissions. These include emissions from animals such as livestock or from releasing the stored carbon from trees during deforestation, that's chopping them down. These emissions can be massive, which is why there's such a focus on primary industry at the moment, and unfortunately, few easy answers on how to actually reduce those, and certainly the societal perspective is a really interesting one here. It's worth noting that you can also track removals here for planted trees. This can offset some of your activities. However, it's really important to bear in mind that a freshly planted tree does not immediately take down tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. It's a process that can take many, many years. This is why it's so important, and a bit of a side note here, why it's so important to read the fine print around tree planting projects. A planted tree cannot and does not offset your flight, to Auckland or Sydney or whatever, at least not immediately. Anyway, this data for a measurement will come from your records around heads of livestock, such as dairy cows, sheep, poultry, etc., and your internal record keeping on your planting and/or deforestation activity. For livestock, measurement processes want this information per head, and for forestry, you need to know the type of forest that you're working with, as well as how many hectares were planted or chopped down over the course of the reporting period. Phew, okay, that was a lot to take in. In summary, we explored Scope 1 emissions, which are direct emissions from your organisation. We covered 4 main categories, which was stationary combustion, that's the emissions from burning materials like coal, wood, diesel, biomass. Fugitive emissions, that's emissions from escaping gases used in refrigeration, heat pumps, and so on. Mobile combustion, that's emissions from fuel burned in the company vehicles. And biogenic emissions, emissions from livestock and forestry activities. So, stay tuned for our next session on Scope 2 emissions. That's the emissions from your use of energy. Thank you.